If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
The Trump campaign has turned to the courts to try to secure a second term for the president. The lawsuits are here in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Nevada. The goal is to win the election over Joe Biden by stopping the ballot count in several states and nixing votes that have yet to be counted.
The only glimpses we've seen of Donald Trump since Joe Biden was projected president-elect came over the weekend at his golf course. He is still not willing to accept defeat, fighting his battle in court and on Twitter. But today he also announced on Twitter he had terminated his defense secretary, Mark Esper. Esper was with the president during the infamous photo op at St. John's Church, where protesters were cleared out with tear gas and flashbang grenades. He then infuriated the president by suggesting he would object to an order to deploy the military to crack down on protesters.
Mark Jesper? Did you call him Jesper? Oh, okay. Some people call him Jesper.
Esper hated the idea he was seen as a yes man, telling the Military Times in an interview published just after he was fired, "Who's pushed back more than anybody? Name another cabinet secretary that's pushed back. Have you seen me on stage saying, under the exceptional leadership of blah, 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 we have blah, 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 blah?" It comes as Team Trump is challenging the election results in several states.
President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris introduced members of their COVID-19 advisory board during a meeting yesterday, and Biden urged Americans to come together to fight the virus.
It's time to put aside the partisanship and the rhetoric that designed to demonize one another. It's time to end the politicization of basic responsible public health steps like mask wearing and social distancing.
Now, beyond assembling the board, there isn't a lot more Biden can do at this point because the head of the General Services Administration has yet to recognize the incoming administration. So a quick social studies lesson here. The GSA is tasked with formally recognizing Biden or any president-elect to begin the transfer of power. The GSA supplies support and workspace to major candidates leading up to the election and supports outgoing presidents as they depart the White House. By not recognizing Biden's win, it's slowing up that process.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a minute afternoon, will also be successful.
President-elect Joe Biden is forging ahead with his transition, even without a concession, overnight tapping his loyal and longtime aide Ron Klain as his chief of staff. Klain serving as Biden's chief of staff when he was vice president and as the Ebola czar for former President Obama, which could be key in the fight against COVID. The president-elect is also holding urgent phone calls with world leaders. Today, Biden spoke with Pope Francis, poignant since he is only the second Catholic to be elected president. It comes as NBC News has learned the Trump State Department is withholding some messages for Biden from some top foreign officials, adding to concerns the delayed concession could be harming national security.
Chris, great to see you. Well, the Biden transition team has announced 9 more members of a Biden White House senior staff, and the president-elect in a statement said these are all people who represent diverse perspectives and are ready to meet the challenges facing the country. And this announcement confirms our reporting from yesterday that Jen O'Malley Dillon will join the White House as deputy chief of staff. And if her name sounds familiar, it's because she is Joe Biden's winning campaign manager, who you see right there on the screen. She's the first woman to run a winning Democratic presidential campaign. As we also reported yesterday, Congressman Cedric Richmond is also joining the administration as senior advisor to the president and director of the White House Office of Public Engagement. Richmond, who you see there on the screen, is a longtime Biden supporter, national co-chair of the Biden campaign. He's also close to Congressman James Clyburn, who, as most people remember, was instrumental in resurrecting the Biden campaign during the primary. Richmond is well regarded on both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill and will be instrumental in making any sort of congressional negotiations. And I think right now Richmond is holding an announcement explaining to his constituents the fact that he is set to join the administration. And I'm also told we have the fuller list that we can tick through, because it also includes some East Wing appointments, longtime advisors to Dr. Jill Biden, who are joining her in the administration. Mike Donilon, a longtime Biden aide, joining the administration in a senior role. Same thing for Steve Ricchetti. And there you see the list there. Also, Julie Rodriguez, director of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. She was a longtime staffer for Kamala Harris, who works with that campaign, is now joining the administration. The other thing to note here, Chris, is that the administration, the transition, says that their team is mostly made up of women and is also comprised at least half by people of color.
The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, held a press conference today continuing to stick to his unfounded claims that there was massive voter fraud in the election. But there's a good chance people had trouble focusing on what he was saying thanks to something black dripping down both sides of his face.
Rudy Giuliani getting hot under the collar today.
I don't know what you need to wake you up.
He was sweating so much his hair dye was running down his face. It was especially obvious when he turned to one side. Finally, he wiped the dye away. The president's top attorney held a press conference in D.C. Meanwhile, the president continues staying out of sight.
There's a huge crisis going on with COVID, and the president is MIA on that.
His estranged niece, psychologist Mary Trump, is weighing in on his state of mind.
He lost. Losing in my family was the worst possible thing you can do, and it was punished severely. So there is a lot of shame.
She says Trump's shame at losing is why he canceled Thanksgiving at Mar-a-Lago.
To show up in public, even in a friendly space like Mar-a-Lago, is to suffer the indignity of being around people who know he's lost and are going to try to soothe him or comfort him in some way, which would be another way of feeling like a loser. So he's going to stay in his bunker as long as he possibly can.
We begin this hour with breaking news. A federal judge in Pennsylvania is tossing out the lawsuit Rudy Giuliani was working on in the president's relentless effort to overturn the 2020 results. The federal judge's ruling is pointed, saying, quote, "This court has been presented with strained legal arguments without merit and speculative accusations unpled in the operative complaint and unsupported by evidence."
President-elect Joe Biden rolling out his national security team tonight, notable for their diverse personal backgrounds, but all with something in common. They served under President Obama.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the State Department.
Topping the list, longtime aide and diplomat Tony Blinken, who was nominated for Secretary of State. He spoke with Margaret Brennan earlier this year.
On day one, what does the first foreign policy priority become?
I think there's going to be a premium on international leadership, international cooperation, international coordination.
Along with Blinken, the president-elect is also bringing back former Secretary of State John Kerry to serve as a presidential climate envoy. Mr. Biden has signaled he intends to hit the reset button when he takes office, rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, the World Health Organization, and the Iran nuclear deal.
There's been some damage done that is going to take some time to dig ourselves out of.
Other historic picks include two firsts for women. Janet Yellen expected to be the next Treasury Secretary, Avril Haines to lead the intelligence community, and Alejandro Mayorkas would become the first Latino Homeland Security Secretary.
President Donald Trump's legal team has parted ways with Sidney Powell, a former federal prosecutor who has aided his flailing effort to contest the results of the U.S. election. In a statement released on Sunday, Trump's other campaign lawyers, Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, said Sidney Powell is practicing law on her own. She is not a member of the Trump legal team.
And now Joe Biden can officially begin the transition process. After several weeks of waiting for the go-ahead, the General Services Administration told the Biden team it can access millions of dollars in federal funds to begin that transition. President Trump had delayed the move, but tonight directed his team to cooperate. In a series of tweets, President Trump vowed not to give up and said, in part, "Our case strongly continues. We will keep up the good fight," he said, "and I believe we will prevail. Nevertheless, in the best interest of our country, I am recommending that the GSA administrator and her team do what needs to be done with regard to initial protocols and have told my team to do the same."
This just in, the president-elect has announced the next White House communications team, and it includes all women in senior positions. Biden's office says Jen Psaki will be press secretary, and she was the White House communications director for former President Obama. Campaign communications director Kate Bedingfield will be in that role for the White House, and campaign senior advisor Simone Sanders will be the chief spokesperson for Vice President-elect Kamala Harris.
Good morning, Carl. Well, this was a very well-telegraphed move, and Yellen has received praise from all sides as the nominee for Treasury Secretary. Biden also naming his rest of his economic team as well, including the Council of Economic Advisors and the Director of the Office of Management and Budget. The common theme that we have heard from all of these nominees since the pandemic started is that the country does need more fiscal relief. It needs to be big, and it needs to happen now. Now, Princeton economist Cecilia Rouse has been tapped to lead the Council of Economic Advisors. Also on that team is Heather Boucher, the director of the Washington Center for Equitable Growth. And together, they helped organize economists from both sides of the aisle to push Congress to pass another coronavirus relief package. Eventually, about 150 economists signed on to a letter that read, "Insufficiently bold congressional policy responses to the Great Recession, unnecessarily prolonged suffering, and stunted economic growth. Congress should not make this mistake again." Now, Rouse and Boucher also recently wrote an op-ed urging the use of automatic stabilizers that would kick in during an economic downturn so that the economy doesn't get stuck waiting on Congress to act. Now, there has been some initial positive reaction to these CEA picks from progressives, but Biden's pick to lead the White House Office of Management and Budget, Neera Tanden, could be a little bit more controversial. She was a close ally of Hillary Clinton and is tangled with progressives in the party in the past. And progressives are saying they really want to make sure that this position has someone in it who does not feel constrained by the record level of the federal debt and deficits and is really willing to go to bat for Biden's more than $5 trillion economic and fiscal agenda. So that could mean, though, Carl, that if she does do that, she could lose Republican support. And of course, all of these nominees do need to be confirmed by the Senate.
The president-elect is going to be in a walking boot for the next couple of weeks. Joe Biden suffered a hairline fracture in his midfoot while playing with his rescue dog, Major, on Saturday. His personal physician confirmed the diagnosis, which was initially believed to be a twisted ankle. Biden was seen leaving the doctor's office last night with a bit of a limp. President Trump actually tweeted something nice, "Get well soon." I guess we'll let you, Joe, be the judge as to whether that was sincere or not.
So let me ask you about Rudy Giuliani, specifically, I mentioned Georgia, but also Michigan. So he attended a Michigan House Oversight Committee hearing. And I wanted to play for you, Matthew, one exchange between one of the GOP lawmakers and one of Giuliani's witnesses, who is an IT contractor for Dominion Voting Systems, who has made unfounded and now completely disproven claims, right, that thousands of ballots were counted multiple times, but not reflected in the poll book. Here's the exchange.
The poll book is completely off. Completely off.
Off by 30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000. That poll book, why don't you look at the registered voters on there?
So my question then is, if the
guess how many? Wait, what about the turnout rate? 120%.
Well, let's let Representative Johnson ask his question.
My question here is, why we're not seeing the poll book off by 30,000 votes? That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I mean, Matthew, this is like watching some sort of a skit. And then when you start to laugh, you realize it's real life.
Aaron, it was certainly compelling testimony, but I don't think it was a type of compelling that
Mayor Giuliani was looking for.
President-elect Joe Biden announcing the health team that will oversee his administration's coronavirus response today. Among Biden's 7 picks, California Attorney General Javier Becerra, who will serve as Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Dr. Anthony Fauci, who Biden has asked to continue in his role as Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and also serve as his Chief Medical Advisor.
I'm not exactly sure what the precise structure that will be put up, but it certainly will be something similar in the sense of a daily monitoring and involvement of this extraordinary challenge that we're going through.
Biden's picks come as he faces increased pressure from progressive and advocacy groups to pick more left-leaning Black and Latino nominees. Biden urging patience as he makes his final picks.
I promise you, it'll be the single most diverse cabinet based on race, color, based on gender that's ever existed in the United States of America.
Retired General Lloyd Austin has served in the U.S. military for 4 decades, rising from West Point graduate to leader of U.S. Central Command. As the leader of U.S. forces in Iraq, Austin oversaw the withdrawal of troops under the Obama-Biden administration.
General Austin was a diplomat. It was not an easy task. He built relationships with our Iraqi counterparts and with our coalition partners.
Austin said Wednesday, as Defense Secretary, he would continue to work to strengthen coalitions.
America is strongest when it works with its allies.
Tonight, the legal battle lines are hardening over the president's virtually impossible effort to try to invalidate the election. More than 100 House Republicans are now supporting a long-shot Texas lawsuit, also supported by the president, aimed at overturning the results in 4 swing states Joe Biden won. Pennsylvania's Democratic Attorney General called the lawsuit a seditious abuse of judicial process, and even some Republicans blasted it.
I do not understand the legal theory.
At a Hanukkah celebration overnight, President Trump again falsely claiming he can win.
Here are certain very important people. If they have wisdom and if they have courage, we're going to win this election.
There's breaking news tonight from the Supreme Court. In a 7-2 ruling, the justices refused to hear a lawsuit filed by the Texas Attorney General trying to throw out millions of ballots in 4 states, all but now ending the president's attempt to reverse his election loss.
Tonight, a rare acknowledgement from President Trump that he'll soon be out of the White House, tweeting the Biden administration will be a scandal-plagued mess for years to come, a reference to the federal criminal investigation of Hunter Biden's finances, authorities examining whether the younger Biden violated tax and money laundering laws in his Chinese business dealings. Hunter Biden says everything was handled legally and appropriately. President Trump has often taken aim at Hunter Biden, but now a new target, his own attorney general, tweeting, "Why didn't the DOJ report the Biden matter before the election?" All of it as President-elect Biden announced a number of former Obama officials for his administration.
They know how government should and can work for all Americans,
including former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice to lead his Domestic Policy Council, former Obama Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough for Veterans Affairs, and former Obama Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack to lead that department again. A big moment for Biden on Monday when 538 electors will cast their votes in all the states to certify his victory.
Donald Trump, since we've been talking, tweeted this: "Just had a very nice meeting with the Attorney General Bill Barr at the White House. Our relationship has been a very good one. He's done an outstanding job. As per letter, Bill will be leaving just before Christmas to spend the holidays with his family. Deputy Attorney General Jeff Rosen, an outstanding person, will become acting Attorney General. Highly respected Richard Donahue will be taking over the duties of Deputy Attorney General. Thank you all!" Exclamation point.
This is what the actual vote for president looks like.
20 votes for the Honorable Joseph R. Biden.
For President Donald J. Trump.
Joseph R. Biden has received 16 votes for President of the United States.
538 presidential electors met around the country pledged to vote for the winner of the popular vote in their states.
It's not just out of tradition, but to show folks, especially now more than ever, our system works.
This process, nearly as old as the nation, has never before received this much attention. In Michigan, the state capital where the electors met was closed to normal business over what officials said were security concerns. As expected, Joe Biden received 306 electoral votes, Donald Trump 232. In this battle for the soul of America, democracy prevailed, Biden says in remarks prepared for his speech tonight. The number of election lawsuits is now down to a trickle without a single significant Trump victory. And legal experts say after today's vote, the ability to change the result in court is gone.
42 days after the election, Republican leader Mitch McConnell today finally acknowledged reality.
The Electoral College has spoken. So today I want to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden. I also want to congratulate the Vice President-elect, our colleague from California, Senator Harris. Beyond our differences, all Americans can take pride that our nation has a female Vice President-elect for the very first time.
If that wasn't clear enough, he sent this message to his Republican colleagues.
The decision by the Electoral College yesterday was determinative.
The president-elect later revealing he and McConnell spoke for the first time since the election.
I had a good conversation with Mitch McConnell today. I called him to thank him for the congratulations.
Today, Biden touching down in Georgia, a state he won in an upset, and where control of the Senate will be decided by 2 runoff elections on January 5th.
You voted as if your life depended on it. Well, guess what? Now you're going to have to do it again.
Biden urging Georgia Democrats to turn out for candidates Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock.
And Katie, it's also interesting that this is coming as we are getting the news about Pete Buttigieg as the nominee for Transportation Secretary. Buttigieg is one of those people, as we've been talking about this transition. We talk about them in terms of the positions that need bodies, not the individuals who need positions. Buttigieg is certainly one of the most high-profile picks so far, the first of that very crowded former Democratic field. And in another president's cabinet, maybe the transportation secretary isn't a glamorous, high-profile job. But let's just remember how much Joe Biden loves trains, how much he talks about transportation, how much infrastructure is important for his agenda. This event today is actually at a former rail yard, so an important signal, I think, of how much he values this position that he's nominating Pete Buttigieg for it.
I search your Twitter feed for the count every day of how many lawsuits the Trump campaign lost. And just first, congratulations on the legal victories. But what was it like to fight against cases that were not rooted in fact?
So thank you, first of all, for having me. To set the record, Trump and his allies have now lost 59 lawsuits.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I thought they wouldn't make it till 60, but they actually then filed a lawsuit in New Mexico after the vote certification. So I suspect that'll be their 60th loss. But it's been a surreal experience because, this election was close, but it wasn't that close, right? I mean, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won 7 million more votes and over 300 electoral votes. And even when you look at the states at the margins, they weren't that close. I mean, we weren't talking about elections in any of these states decided by hundreds or even a few thousand votes. We're talking about elections that were decided by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of votes. And so, the lawsuits that were filed one after another were just, surreal. They were not grounded in fact, but they also weren't grounded in law.
Yeah, that's right, Eamon. Yesterday we heard the president-elect talk about his barrier-breaking cabinet, and we have a new barrier broken here with Congresswoman Deb Haaland of New Mexico as his choice to lead the Interior Department. She would be the first Native American ever to lead that department. Now, what's interesting about this, Eamon, is that it was seemingly, weeks ago, a more obvious choice than it turned out to be, in part because of that very tough math now in the House. Democrats are looking like they're going to enter the new Congress with just 222 seats. You need 218 to be in the majority. And so obviously with the number of vacancies that could occur, you already have Cedric Richmond, who will resign to join the West Wing as a senior official there. You have Marcia Fudge, obviously already nominated to be the HUD secretary. You're now seeing those numbers dwindle even further in the House. We've seen some pressure on the Biden transition from House leadership, not explicitly about any particular choice, but constantly reminding the Biden team about those difficult numbers. But the Biden team getting ready to announce this pick. We've confirmed with multiple sources, Jeff Bennett and I, that she is the choice, being cheered by progressives as well as a strong choice as he looks to balance, of course, not just the racial and ethnic diversity, but the ideological diversity in his cabinet.
First on this attack, is it possible that as the full picture comes into focus, it's much worse and much deeper into our government than we currently understand it to be?
It's definitely possible, Nicole. Some government public affairs spokespeople were saying, oh, we're good, our networks are clean. We don't know that yet. We're only 72, 96 hours into reporting about this epic breach of America's national security, one of the largest, if not the largest, already believed to be the largest cyber attack on our government. And what we do know is that the signatures of this attack trace back to APT-29, that's Advanced Persistent Threat 29, a group of threat actors that are closely linked to Russia's external intelligence service, the SVR, which is the successor of the KGB. So this appears to be a Kremlin-directed cyber attack against the U.S. government, and it's going to take weeks, if not months, Nicole, to do the full damage assessment to figure out exactly what Russia knows, when did they start knowing it, and how are we ever going to get them off of our network if they're watching the emails of the IT and security professionals whose job it is to defend America.
Guys, we're going to start with stimulus today. We've had those attempts at unanimous consent in the House fail early this morning, which means the House is going to try this a different way on Monday. Eamon Javers has more. Hey, Eamon.
Yeah, that's right, Carl. We saw that just within the past hour. Nancy Pelosi here trying to call the president's bluff. You remember that the president said he was upset with this relief bill because the amount of money going to individuals at $600 was too small. He said he wanted $2,000. So Nancy Pelosi said, fine, you want $2,000? I'll put that on the House floor. Well, we saw that just within the past hour. Republicans blocked the measure to increase the funding from $600 to $2,000. Republicans offered their own measure, which Democrats blocked. So now we're at loggerheads here in Washington, D.C., all that attracting the ire of the majority leader, Steny Hoyer.
President Trump delivering an early Christmas surprise overnight, pardoning more than 24 people, including some key political allies. Former campaign chairman Paul Manafort pled guilty to financial fraud and then lying to investigators. Longtime political advisor Roger Stone convicted of lying to Congress, witness tampering, and obstructing a House inquiry. And Charles Kushner, the father of Mr. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner. Charles Kushner spent 2 years in prison for tax evasion and lying to the FEC, prosecuted by then U.S. Attorney Chris Christie, who described the case on PBS last year.
I mean, it's one of the most loathsome, disgusting crimes that I prosecuted when I was U.S. Attorney.
Wick, good morning. The whiplash kept Americans on edge for days, but after throwing relief for millions into jeopardy, the president finally relenting and signing that rescue package he called a disgrace. Overnight, President Trump changing course again, finally signing the $2.3 trillion spending and stimulus relief bill with just 24 hours to go until a government shutdown. The president's reversal came after he held onto the bill for nearly a week, letting unemployment benefits run dry for millions, while for days he blasted the deal his own team helped negotiate.
It really is a disgrace.
But under pressure from lawmakers, he suddenly decided to move forward.
And now to new details this evening on a lawsuit we've been talking about that was filed by East Texas Representative Louis Gohmert against Vice President Mike Pence. We're getting new information. A federal judge has now dismissed the case as of tonight. That was in an attempt to transform the vice president's purely ceremonial role in presiding over the announcement of the Electoral College results is what we're talking about. Now, this result would change the position in which the vice president could effectively hand the election to President Trump.
Senator will come to order. Tonight on Capitol Hill, Senate Republicans issuing a remarkable rebuke of President Trump, overriding his veto for the first time.
The bill on reconsideration is passed.
Congress overwhelmingly passing the National Defense Authorization Act, which includes a 3% pay raise for troops and renaming military bases honoring Confederate generals, one of the points the president opposed.
We've passed this legislation 59 years in a row. Now it's time for us to deliver this bill.
Trump today on Twitter calling Senate Republicans pathetic.
A new band of Trump loyalists, 11 Republican senators, current and incoming, deliver a controversial ultimatum.
Voter fraud is a real problem.
Led by Texas Senator Ted Cruz, the group says they will object to Joe Biden's Electoral College victory unless Congress creates a new electoral commission to conduct an emergency 10-day audit of the election returns. Wednesday, Congress will carry out the tradition of certifying the Electoral College results state by state. Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley and a group of House Republicans had already announced plans to object. The president tweeted praise. After they see the facts, plenty more to come. Our country will love them for it.
They rigged our presidential election, but we will still win it.
The people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated. So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Senator, it is so specific what the president is asking of the Georgia Secretary of State. Another description that I did read in just a headline from the Washington Post, Trump alternately begs and berates the Raffensperger to overturn President-elect Joe Biden's win in the state of Georgia.
Because Georgia was already going to be the center of the political universe this week. That's before the release of that secret recording of that phone call between the Secretary of State and Donald Trump that we would never have heard had the president not tweeted.
If the president hadn't tweeted and tweeted something that was false, would we have ever heard that call recording?
No, it was a private conversation as far as I was concerned. And he broke privacy when he put out a tweet, but then his tweet was false. If President Trump wouldn't have tweeted out anything and would have stayed silent, we would have stayed silent as well.
All 10 living former secretaries of defense are cautioning against any attempt to use the military to overturn November's presidential election. The former Pentagon chiefs, both Republicans and Democrats, put their names to an opinion article published Sunday in the Washington Post. The article says the time for questioning the results of the election have passed. The former secretaries warn involving the military in resolving election disputes would take the country into dangerous, unlawful, and unconstitutional territory.
That the total number of votes cast is 427, of which the Honorable Nancy Pelosi of the state of California has received 216. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 209. The Honorable Tammy Duckworth of the state of Illinois has received 1 vote. The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 1 vote. Therefore, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi of the state of California, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 117th Congress.
And tonight, President Trump is still insisting that the election was stolen from him, even as Congress is set to confirm Joe Biden's win. The president plans to address supporters tomorrow here in Washington. He's also pressuring Vice President Mike Pence to use powers he does not have to overturn the results. We get more now from CBS's Weijia Zhang.
Tonight, thousands of pro-Trump protesters gather near the White House ahead of Congress confirming President-elect Joe Biden's victory tomorrow. President Trump promises to keep fighting it with what he considers a final test of loyalty for Vice President Mike Pence, tweeting falsely that the vice president has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors. The president has privately and publicly pressured Mr. Pence to stop Congress from approving the election results.
I have to tell you, I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. He's a great guy. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much.
And this is breaking news. NBC News now projects Raphael Warnock as the winner in the special Georgia Senate election tonight. Raphael Warnock, the projected winner, beating incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler with at this point, 36,000 vote margin. The votes are still now up to 40,000. The votes are still being counted in Georgia. Raphael Warnock is building that lead. Let's go straight to Steve Kornacki at the big board with the latest numbers. Steve Kornacki, what do we have?
All right, Lauren, so what just happened that caused this race to be called for Raphael Warnock? And you can see the official call on our screen. We got another batch of votes from DeKalb County. We've been talking about DeKalb County. We didn't get all of the outstanding vote, but we got about 6,000 more votes. Remember, there were about 18,000 outstanding, so about a third of the remaining vote in DeKalb County, overwhelmingly Democratic DeKalb County, just came in. Warnock won 91% of the new vote that just came in, so extremely Democratic vote that just came in. What that does to Warnock's lead statewide is it pushes it over 40,000. It pushes it to a full point. Again, still more than 10,000 votes to come in DeKalb County. You can see the dramatic effect that these updates from DeKalb County are having. So Warnock still, there is vote to come from DeKalb County that will push that lead out further for him. There is still, as we said, 7,500 mail ballots to come from Fulton County. We expect that to also benefit Warnock, potentially votes in Chatham County, Savannah, the opportunity for him to build that lead north of 50,000 and putting it into a place, Lawrence, we were talking about this a little earlier, the decision desk is looking for, does a candidate get to a place where there just is no realistic way that the opponent, the trailing candidate, can get back in it? And Warnock is putting this race in a position now where there's not a realistic path for Kelly Loeffler.
It looks like the president-elect has decided on an attorney general, and it's a familiar name, particularly to Washington, D.C. folk. Yeah.
You're right about that, Chuck. Two sources familiar tell my colleague Mike Memoli and me that President-elect Joe Biden has selected Judge Merrick Garland to serve as his attorney general. As we've been reporting for weeks, Biden's short list included Garland, outgoing Senator Doug Jones of Alabama, and former Deputy Attorney General in the Trump administration, Sally Yates. And the conventional thinking had been up until last night that the easiest of those three to confirm would have been Doug Jones, someone who enjoys lots of close relationships with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, senators on both sides of the aisle. But now that Democrats appear poised to take control of the Senate, of course, those races have not been called, but that appears to be the direction. The calculus has changed a bit. There was a concern that if Joe Biden elevated Merrick Garland, he would then have to replace him on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals on which he sits, and that would have been potentially another confirmation battle. But now that concern appears to be no more.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote of the state of Arizona that the teller has verified appears to be regular in form and authentic?
Mr. Vice President, I, Paul Gosar from Arizona.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
I rise up for myself and 60 of my colleagues to object to the counting of the electoral ballots from Arizona.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a senator?
Yes, it is.
It is.
We're debating a step that has never been taken in American history. Whether Congress should overrule the voters and overturn a presidential election. I've served 36 years in the Senate. This will be the most important vote I've ever cast. President Trump claims the election was stolen. The assertions range from specific local allegations to constitutional arguments to sweeping conspiracy theories. I supported the president's right to use the legal system. Dozens of lawsuits received hearings in courtrooms all across our country. But over and over, the courts rejected these claims, including all-star judges whom the president himself has nominated. Every election, we know, features some illegality and irregularity, and of course, That's unacceptable. I support strong state-led voting reforms. Last year's bizarre pandemic procedures must not become the new norm. But my colleagues, nothing before us proves illegality anywhere near the massive scale that would have tipped the entire election.
Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
No audio. They just cut out. It looks like they and sometimes the Senate
like they just ushered Mike Pence out really quickly.
Yes, they did. That's exactly what just happened there. And they ushered Mike Pence out. They moved him fast. I saw the motions too.
And you know, the vice president has an office right off the Senate floor. All of those offices have lots of windows. That's why they're prime territory.
All right.
So there are also tunnels under the Capitol where all of us have gone, the railroad tunnel, the tunnel between the buildings. There are many ways to get him out of the Capitol building and to be escorted inside the building, underground, and he could come up on the other side.
These are, a reminder, these are pool cameras. Trust me, we would love to show you the other side of the Senate chamber.
Let me just also say,
flip that sound there right now.
To clear all those people away from that East Front, that's the East Front where Joe Biden, after the inaugural, is supposed to be reviewing the troops. That just to let people realize that's where the outgoing president gets on the helicopter to fly away, if you remember all of the past inaugurals.
Is this Secret Service that's just walked in, guys?
I don't want to speculate, but I had the same. You hit it, Katie. I had the same first instinct there too. Felt like a lot of guys.
A lot of guys.
And they were motioning
everybody to get down.
Yeah.
I just
a lot of vests, a lot of protection.
And they're doing it again. I think we should talk about just what happened a couple moments ago with Donald Trump saying, "Let's go to the Capitol. Let's go to the Capitol. Let's go to the Capitol."
Well, Joe Biden, I think President-elect Biden gave us the punctuation we were looking for there on his way out the door when it looked like he stopped to take a question from a reporter in attendance. I want to underscore some of the things that he said because they represent historic firsts for our country. He described this conduct as borderline sedition. We've had a real problem with language, I think, over the last 5 years. Many of us have been reluctant to call lies lies. They were misstatements and mistruths. Joe Biden went there. He called it an insurrection. And he said it borders on sedition. Those are very, very strong and important words to be used to characterize what is happening today at the United States Senate. And as he said, these are not protesters. That's the wrong word. An important moment, I think, for the incoming president. You could also see some emotion as he prayed for the safety of the people inside the Capitol. He called that building home for the vast majority of his own career. And I know empathy is his thing, but I'm sure he feels it in excess. You heard from him, though, the same thing I heard from the 3 national security officials I talked to. One, the point that words matter, that the president's words have incited this today. Everything you see has a through line to what Donald Trump has said and done in the days and weeks and months now since he lost the presidential election to Joe Biden. He also called on Donald Trump, and we'll wait for our White House unit to get us some reporting on how that was received. President-elect Biden called on the lame duck President Donald Trump to take to national television today to call on his supporters to stand down.
Before we went to the president-elect, we should note some other major news taking place, somewhat related to all this. NBC News now projecting that Jon Ossoff, the Democrat, will win the Senate runoff in the state of Georgia. And that leads to the projection that Democrats will regain control of the U.S. Senate. It'll be a 50-50 split. Vice President Kamala Harris, Vice President-elect, as Vice President, will have the tying the tie-breaking vote.
We're looking at live images in the streets of Washington right now. It is 10 minutes after 6 p.m. and 6 p.m. matters here because the mayor of D.C. has imposed a citywide curfew that anybody out on the streets after 6 p.m. is liable to be arrested. So it remains to be seen how this is going to be enforced. It remains to be seen how the Capitol complex will be secured both inside and out, given the breaches that we've seen today and given the fact that even if they've been able to clear people from the halls and offices at this point, the complex was shot through today with people who were unscreened, who may have brought weapons and other things into that Capitol complex. That danger underscored by the fact that the FBI has confirmed that they've addressed at least 2 suspected explosive devices. Just a remarkable day. Just a remarkable day, and I fear it's going to be a very dark night. Nicole?
You know, Rachel, you and Claire were talking. Claire made the point that if these were African-American, then we don't have an example of rioters, but if the people outside the Capitol have been of a different race, I mean, the Capitol was evacuated in a similar way to today when the people that threatened it were foreign terrorists. And if these were terrorists, they would have been blown off the planet. The fact that they have been treated with such kid gloves feels like a slow-moving scandal.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
We condemn the violence that took place here in the strongest possible terms. We grieve the loss of life in these hallowed halls, as well as the injuries suffered by those who defended our Capitol today. To those who wreaked havoc in our Capitol today, you did not win. Violence never wins.
I can only think of 2 times in American history that individuals laid siege to our Capitol, stormed our sacred civic spaces, and tried to upend and overrun this government. One was in the War of 1812, and the other one was today. What's interesting about the parallel between the two is they both were waving flags to a sole sovereign, to an individual, surrendering democratic principles to the cult of personality. One was a monarch in England, and the other were the flags I saw all over our Capitol, including in the hallways and in this room, to a single person named Donald Trump. The sad difference between these 2 times is one was yet another nation in the history of our country that tried to challenge the United States of America. But this time, we brought this hell upon ourselves.
Here's Senator Mitt Romney, one of the first and only Republican voices to condemn the events of today as being on Trump's head.
As a place of hope. And I saw the images being broadcast around the world, and it breaks my heart. I have 25 grandchildren. Many of them were watching TV, thinking about this building, whether their grandpa was okay. I knew I was okay. I must tell you as well, I was proud to serve with these men and women. This is an extraordinary group of people. I'm proud to be a member of the United States Senate and meet with people of integrity as we do here today. Now we gather due to a selfish man's injured pride, and the outrage of supporters who he has deliberately misinformed for the past 2 months and stirred to action this very morning. What happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. Those who choose to continue to support his dangerous gambit by objecting to the results of a legitimate democratic election will forever be seen as being complicit in an unprecedented attack against our democracy. Fairly or not, they'll be remembered for their role in this shameful episode in American history. That will be their legacy. I salute Senator Langford and Loeffler and Braun and Daines, and I'm sure others, who in the light of today's outrage have withdrawn their objection. For any who remain insistent on an audit in order to satisfy the many people who believe that the election was stolen, I'd offer this perspective. No congressional audit is ever going to convince these voters, particularly when the president will continue to say that the election was stolen. The best way we can show respect for the voters who are upset is by telling them the truth.
For what reason does the gentlelady from Georgia rise?
Mr. President, I, along with 70 of my Republican colleagues, object to the counting of the electoral votes for the state of Michigan on the grounds that the error rate precedes the FEC rate allowed at 0.0008%, and that the people who signed affidavits at risk of perjury, their voices have not been heard in a court of law.
Section 15 and 17 of Title III of the U.S. Code require that any objection be presented in writing and signed by a member of the House of Representatives and a senator. Is the objection in writing and signed by a member and a senator?
The objection is writing, not signed by a senator.
In that case, the objection cannot be entertained. Are there any further objections to counting the certificate of the vote from the state of Michigan? The certificate the teller has verified appears to be regular in form and authentic.
It's not as if there's nothing we can do because of that, and if there was, I don't think this nation would have made it to almost 250 years. The fact is, Madam Speaker, the fact is that at the end of the day, people... Gentleman from Virginia. Gentleman will say this point of order.
The gentleman will say his point of order.
Yes, ma'am. Point of order. The gentleman said that there were lies on this floor here today. Looking over this direction, I ask that those words be taken down. We may have a disagreement on matters, but
Mr. Land, it's not timely.
This side of the aisle liars.
No, the gentleman's man was not timely. You didn't register an appropriate time. The gentleman will proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the fact is that at the end of the day...
Yeah, look, you say that about me every single day. So
the truth hurts.
Hold your tongue. The gentleman will proceed.
It hurts. It hurts them. It hurts this country. It hurts all of us. But the fact is that the people have made this country work by not giving in. Go ahead, shout it out. Say
the gentleman is not in order. The gentleman will proceed. The gentleman will proceed.
One last thing to say, Madam Speaker, and I thank you for your patience. All people need to know, all they need to know tonight, Madam Speaker,
there'll be order in the House. There'll be order in the House. There'll be order in the House. The gentleman will clear this chamber. The gentleman will clear the chamber. Gentleman will proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The truth hurts. But the fact is this. We want this government to work more than they want it to fail. And after everything that's happened today, we want that more than ever. Know that, the people watching at home. We want this government to work. We will make it work. They will not make it fail. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
The whole number of electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 306 votes. Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana has received 232 votes. The announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for the term beginning on the 20th day of January, 2021, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Well, one thing that's clear, Hoda, what happened yesterday on Capitol Hill was a total breakdown of security, and that is already leading to multiple investigations, not only into the people behind the violence, of course, but the security failures. What happened? How could this happen at the seat of government at this crucial time? NBC's Justice correspondent Pete Williams is on that angle this morning. Pete, good morning.
Savannah, there are many questions here. Questions about why the police were not better prepared. It may well be that they never thought people would try to enter the Capitol building. The last time there was a storming of the Capitol grounds, anything like this, was during the Vietnam War in 1971. But those demonstrators made a point of sitting on the Capitol steps. They did not try to get in. This crowd turned out to be far more violent, bent not simply on protesting, but on taking over and shutting down the vote count. The second question is why it took so long to get reinforcements inside to control and clear the building. And many of the early people deployed did not have riot or protective gear. What concerns many in law enforcement this morning is that the extremists in these groups may now feel empowered by what happened. They will view this, what happened on Wednesday, as a victory, getting on to the House and Senate floors and forcing a shutdown. Now, the inauguration at the Capitol is just 13 days away, and the events of the past 24 hours will certainly cause a rethinking of those arrangements.
Those calls are mounting for the president to step down or be removed from office. NBC's Kristen Welker joins us now from the White House. She's got the latest there. Hey, Kristen, good morning.
Hey, Hoda, good morning to you. That's right. Some of those calls coming from some of the president's current and former officials. Look, we cannot overstate this. This is a White House in chaos. Peter just mentioned it. Multiple officials resigning overnight after President Trump failed to deliver a full-throated condemnation of the violence yesterday as it was unfolding. Instead, he sent out 2 tweets and a short video in which he did call for peace, but he also reiterated those false claims of voter fraud. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram temporarily banned his account over those false claims. And let's just remind our viewers one more time what yesterday looked like as a mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. It all started Wednesday morning. That's when a crowd of thousands gathered here in the nation's capital. They were largely peaceful, Hoda, at the start. The president did address the crowd at around noon and said he would never concede. He urged his supporters, Peter just mentioned this, to walk to the Capitol, which is exactly what they did. And that's when this mayhem really began. A mob swarming the building, eventually breaking through the Capitol, threatening police. Members of Congress had to be evacuated as some rioters even posed for pictures. Someone even pictured with their feet propped up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Now, at one point, police say that the woman was shot in the Capitol by law enforcement, and she did not survive. President-elect Joe Biden, throughout this, called for calm and implored the president to speak out publicly to tell his supporters to stand down. Now, a 6 p.m. curfew was imposed here in Washington. Ultimately, order was restored overnight as night fell. Now, lawmakers were able to get back to work. But as I mentioned, there have been resignations here, and we are anticipating that there will be more resignations as pressure mounts on this president to really give a more full-throated condemnation of everything that we witnessed yesterday. Hoda, I can tell you the lights are out here at the White House right now. Even some of his top aides still in the dark about what the president is planning to do next. Hoda.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack on the United States Capitol. Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders. America is and must always be a nation of law and order. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay. We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored. We must get on with the business of America. My campaign vigorously pursued every legal avenue to contest the election results. My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote. In so doing, I was fighting to defend American democracy. I continue to strongly believe that we must reform our election laws to verify the identity and eligibility of all voters and to ensure faith and confidence in all future elections. Now Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation. 2020 has been a challenging time for our people. A menacing pandemic has upended the lives of our citizens, isolated millions in their homes, damaged our economy, and claimed countless lives. Defeating this pandemic and rebuilding the greatest economy on earth will require all of us working together. It will require a renewed emphasis on the civic values of patriotism, faith, charity, community, and family. We must revitalize the sacred bonds of love and loyalty that bind us together as one national family. To the citizens of our country, serving as your president has been the honor of my lifetime. And to all of my wonderful supporters, I know you are disappointed, but I also want you to know that our incredible journey is only just beginning. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
The editorial board at the Kansas City Star even saying that Hawley has blood on his hands in the Capitol coup attempt. Take a look at a picture that was taken of Hawley acknowledging the protesters yesterday at the Capitol with his fist raised in the air. That picture was taken, we understand, before the mob stormed the Capitol building.
Well-known publishing house is cutting ties with Senator Hawley tonight. Simon & Schuster is pulling its publication of Hawley's upcoming book. It cites his attempts to overturn results of the presidential election as well as yesterday's violent riots at the Capitol. Simon & Schuster says it, quote, cannot support Senator Hawley after his role in what became a dangerous threat. The senator wasted little time responding, saying in part, quote, Simon & Schuster is canceling my contract because I was representing my constituents, leading a debate on the Senate floor on voter integrity, which they have now decided to redefine as sedition. He added, quote, we will see you in court.
Do you think some of them should resign? Should Senator Cruz or Senator Hawley resign?
I think they should be just flat beaten the next time they run. I think the American public has a real good, clear look at who they are. They're part of the big lie.
I want to pick up on something that you just said about President Trump actively encouraging the insurrection at the Capitol. Given that, given the perceived threat that he poses, My question to you is not so much about the role that Congress should play in impeachment, but rather, should President Trump, in your estimation, remain in office?
I didn't think, look, I've been saying for now well over a year, he is not fit to serve. He is not fit to serve. He's one of the most incompetent presidents in the history of the United States of America. And so the idea that I think he shouldn't be out of office yesterday is not the issue. The question is, what happens with 14 days left to go or 13 days left to go? And I think that what 81 million people stood up and said, it's time for him to go. I was told that on the way up here, way over here, that he indicated he wasn't going to show up at the inauguration. One of the few things he and I have ever agreed on. It's a good thing I'm not showing up.
Earlier, you'd said that if you'd hope that he would show up only in the sense that it was valuable to send a signal to the world about the transfer of power. You've clearly changed your perspective on that.
Because he has clearly demonstrated, he's exceeded even my worst notions about him. He's been an embarrassment to the country.
Kelly, the question now is how much longer the president's term will last and if President Trump's term will go all the way until January 20th. House Democrats are on a call that's ongoing right now discussing next steps for a possible second impeachment of the president, with that process potentially beginning as soon as Monday, according to NBC News. Speaker Nancy Pelosi is telling colleagues that she is expected to speak with President-elect Joe Biden later today to discuss the option, which House Democratic leadership had said in recent days was sort of a backup option if Vice President Pence did not remove Trump from office himself through the 25th Amendment. Some Republicans who voted against Trump's last impeachment, like Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, have suggested they could support it this time, but others like West Virginia moderate Joe Manchin, a Democrat, have raised doubts it would succeed this time. Now, three sources familiar with the matter tell me that Secretaries Mnuchin and Pompeo are among the cabinet secretaries who separately explored the possibility of the 25th Amendment in recent days, but it was seen as too lengthy and uncertain a process to succeed, and so the conclusion was to let the clock run out on Trump's presidency and hope that family members could convince him of a détente. In the meantime, Speaker Pelosi issued a statement saying today she spoke with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff about the remaining days of Trump's presidency and said that she wanted to prevent Trump from, in her words, initiating military hostilities or accessing the launch codes for a potential nuclear strike.
They were warned. Now all those conspiracy theories around Dominion voting systems has led to real legal action. Election equipment manufacturer Dominion suing pro-Trump lawyer Sidney Powell, claiming defamation and seeking $1.3 billion in damages. Powell has pushed unfounded conspiracy theories alleging a mass conspiracy to change votes in favor of President-elect Joe Biden, claiming Dominion bribed Georgia officials, even alleging the company was created in Venezuela. The lawsuit reads, after Dominion sent Powell a letter putting her on formal notice of the facts and the death threats and asking her to retract her false claims, Powell doubled down, tweeting to her 1.2 million Twitter followers this tweet, which said she was retracting nothing. This comes after Eric Coomer, the security director for the Colorado-based company, sued the Trump campaign, Powell, and Rudy Giuliani, among others, after being named in false charges as a key actor in rigging the election. Following the suit, conservative media outlets Newsmax and One American News Network walked back their conspiracy claims on Dominion.
More members of the pro-Trump mob that stormed the Capitol are now under arrest. They are people who became infamous in photos and videos, and now they're facing federal charges. I want to go straight to CNN's Evan Perez. Evan, who has been arrested?
Anna, we have a national roundup happening right now, and among the arrests that the Justice Department has now announced is a man by the name of Adam Johnson. He was arrested back home in Florida, and we're expecting that he's going to be appearing in court here in Washington, D.C. Next week. But really, he's one of the ones that you see in those images. He's holding the lectern of the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Another arrest, a man by the name of Jacob Chansley. He's the one that you see in some of these images with face paint and a sort of bearskin hat. Another one arrested is Derek Evans, who is a delegate from the House of the House of Delegates in West Virginia. Just a flavor of some of the 17 or so arrests that the federal government, that the federal prosecutors have brought in federal court. There's another 40 or so that are facing charges in the municipal courts or the local courts here in Washington. We're told that this is a nationwide effort now, but really I just want to stop for a minute and despite the carnival atmosphere of some of these images that you're seeing, there is a more serious part of this, and that is, a lot more than the 5 deaths could have resulted from this mob scene. You had a man with a truck full of bombs that was parked outside one of the House buildings just right across the street from the Capitol. He was essentially left that truck full of bombs to go attend the Trump rally, and then came back and was arrested as a result of that. A lot more serious consequences could have happened from this event.
So many different adjectives have been used to describe the events and what we witnessed. So what are the charges specifically that they're facing? Because people have talked about domestic terrorism, sedition, insurrection. We've talked and used all of those words in the last several days. What are they facing in terms of charges?
Right, that's fascinating. That's a great point. At this point, some of these charges range from entering a federal building without permission. Some of them are facing weapons charges. Some of them brought weapons. At least one man came to Washington, said on text messages that he wanted to kill Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. He was armed. Some of them had weapons on them. But a lot of these charges so far are a lot, essentially stealing materials from a federal building. These are the charges that are, again, this is just the beginning of this investigation. One of the things that prosecutors are going to try to figure out is whether they can bring some of those more serious charges that you're talking about. Over the summer, the former Attorney General, Bill Barr, told prosecutors that they should look into whether you could bring seditious conspiracy charges against some of the Black Lives Matter protesters who were trying to bring down some of the monuments and so on. The question is, do prosecutors use those types of charges against these people?
Tonight, a deafening silence from the president's Twitter account in his waning days as commander-in-chief. Twitter, run by CEO Jack Dorsey, saying after close review of the president's recent tweets, it banned him due to the risk of further incitement of violence. Twitter specifically warning, quote, plans for future armed protests have already begun proliferating on and off Twitter, including a proposed secondary attack on the U.S. Capitol and state Capitol buildings on January 17th. After the ban, the president tried to tweet from other campaign and staff accounts, triggering a game of whack-a-mole, with Twitter quickly taking down his posts. Many platforms have banned or restricted the president's accounts, including Facebook and Instagram, where he's blocked indefinitely and for at least the next 2 weeks.
And some of the biggest American companies also taking action. JP Morgan, Citigroup are suspending all political donations after the Capitol riots. Meanwhile, Marriott and Blue Cross Blue Shield are halting donations to Republicans who voted against certifying Joe Biden's election victory. Christine Romans joins us now with more business backing away, Christine, finally recognizing that they have to put their money where their mouths and their views are on what their customers feel too.
This is the final good and true breakup, I think, of business with its business president, right? I mean, in the very beginning, there was optimism that they were going to be able to get, some policies that they'd really enjoy, like tax cuts. They loved the tax cuts corporate America did. They didn't love the president's tariffs. They didn't love his tone. And now some of these companies with pretty sharp words are backing away from Republican lawmakers, in particular, Blue Cross Blue Shield, in its statement saying that they will suspend contributions to those lawmakers who voted to, quote, undermine our democracy. So one after another, companies are coming out with their statements for how they're going to handle this. And I can tell you, companies you haven't heard from yet, their executive teams are huddled together trying to decide what is the appropriate response for these companies, not only for their customers, but their employees who are very, very concerned about the kind of America that their companies are doing business in at the moment.
And this morning, President-elect Joe Biden announced his plan to nominate William J. Burns, a former career diplomat, to run the CIA. The Washington Post's David Ignatius joins us with his new reporting on that choice.
And David, you broke the story. Tell us about it.
So, Joe and Mika, the decision to pick Bill Burns to run the CIA is a significant one. This was the last big national security choice that Biden had to make, and it's really interesting in what it tells us about how President-elect Biden intends to govern. Bill Burns is a classic gray man of diplomacy, as I wrote this morning. He's a person who administrations, Republican and Democratic, have turned to for sensitive missions. He speaks Russian and Arabic. He's served in some of the toughest places around the world. He's a classic example of the very best in our foreign service.
In response to last week's violence, the Homeland Security Secretary late today ordered the Secret Service to begin the period of beefed-up inaugural security 6 days earlier than planned, starting Wednesday. That means a perimeter of no-scale fence around the Capitol, security checkpoints with metal detectors, streets closed down for several blocks, and tens of thousands of police and federal agents ready to respond to violence, scenes like this in downtown Washington 4 years ago. National Guard troops, too, with the military now considering whether they should be armed.
Boy, for the last 4 days, all I have been hearing from my sources in and around the vice president's orbit has been how upset he was about, frankly, the lack of contact from President Trump, not just on Wednesday night as the vice president and his family, huddled in a secure room in the Capitol, but since then, up until, frankly, tonight. So, listen, I can't characterize the conversation beyond what I'm hearing from a senior administration official saying it was a good conversation, but you have to imagine the undertones of awkwardness were there, right? Now, formally, we're told by that official that the two of them talked about the week ahead, reflected on the last 4 years, we're told, of the administration's work and accomplishments. They did talk about what happened at the Capitol, reiterating that the people who broke the law do not represent the America First movement that the president represents, pledging to continue their work on behalf of the country. But I will tell you that there is real anger on the part of allies of the vice president at the way that he's been treated by President Trump in their view. And
Hallie, on another subject, the acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf resigned late today. What can you tell us about that?
So this was interesting, and notably in his resignation letter, acting Secretary Wolf did not cite the riots at the Capitol, as we have seen happen in other resignations over the past week, like, for example, the Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. Instead, what Wolf said was that he felt like he could no longer serve because of his, for lack of a better word, temporary title. He is the acting secretary. There has been a lot of questions about him being acting and not formally in that role. And there's been litigation surrounding that. So Wolf stepped away. It came just a few days, of course, after Wolf said in a letter that he would stay on until the end of the administration's term.
Chanel, good morning to you. Well, this is significant. This is the first time that President Trump has spoken out in 5 days. And in his remarks, he urged his supporters not to engage in violence. And as you said, he also weighed in on threats of impeachment. Take a listen to what he had to say just moments ago.
We want no violence, never violence. We want absolutely no violence. And on the impeachment, it's really a continuation of the greatest witch hunt in the history of politics. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This impeachment is causing tremendous anger, and you're doing it, and it's really a terrible thing that they're doing. For Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to continue on this path, I think it's causing tremendous danger to our country, and it's causing tremendous anger. I want no violence. Thank you very much.
NBC News political reporter Josh Letterman joins us now live from Alamo, Texas. Josh, the president was speaking to law enforcement audience members there. He pointed to them, but he did not appear to mention fallen Capitol Hill police officer Brian Sicknick. How was he received there in Texas today?
Well, Eamon, the president may be under fire from all sides back in Washington, but here along the Texas border with Mexico, it was a chance for the president to pat himself on the back for a job that he said was well done on immigration policy and specifically on building that border wall. The very first thing President Trump did when he got to a stretch of the border wall just a couple miles from where I'm at right now, he took out a black Sharpie and he went up to the border wall and he signed a Donald Trump plaque that had been attached to the bottom of the wall.
Well, Senator McConnell, I think, is fed up with President Trump, especially given what happened last Wednesday in the U.S. Capitol. Well, if you have to remember that Senator McConnell is somebody who cares deeply about the Senate and the institution of Congress. He's never wanted to be president. He's always just wanted to be Senate Majority Leader. That was his lifelong goal. In 2 days last week, President Trump basically frittered away Senator McConnell's majority leader status on Tuesday. And the next day, a sort of a pro-Trump mob stormed the Capitol and desecrated the building that McConnell reveres. So in a 2-day span, Wolf, I think Senator McConnell sort of deeply hurt by what happened. And politically, if we're being totally candid, I think he sees an opportunity now to purge President Trump, get rid of him from the Republican Party, and move on, make a fresh break.
So you think if there's a Senate trial, and there almost certainly will be a Senate trial, is it at all realistic, Jonathan, to think that he's going to be the minority leader, but now still the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, could vote in favor of conviction?
Yes.
We have some breaking news. Wyoming Congresswoman and House Republican Conference Chair Liz Cheney says she will vote to impeach President Trump, releasing a statement that says, in part, the President of the United States summoned this mob, assembled this mob, and lit the flame of this attack. Everything that followed was his doing. None of this would have happened without the president. The president could have immediately and forcefully intervened to stop the violence. He did not.
On Capitol Hill, where the House is voting on a measure that demands Vice President Pence use the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump. But there's brand new information in now, and our Elon Moy has it in Washington. Vice President Pence just sent a letter to the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. What'd he say?
Well, Shep, Pence is responding to that call from Congress for him to remove the president by invoking the 25th Amendment. And he said, I do not believe that such a course of action is in the best interest of our nation or consistent with the Constitution.
Well, the latest arrest was of a man who appeared in a hoodie and a sweatshirt that said Camp Auschwitz. He has been arrested in Newport News, Virginia. They are fanning out all across the country in truly every state, because, as we know, people came from all across the country. And we've now learned, a defense official has told us, that there will be as many as 20,000 National Guard deployed to Washington, D.C. by this weekend, because they believe that the trouble is going to start again even before the inauguration. There were several.
As you were speaking, we're seeing some of the images of those National Guard members actually napping inside the Capitol, because that's how long their shifts are right now. That's how many of them are currently stationed in the Capitol as we speak. And Martha, we're hearing that the Speaker herself.
Go ahead. I'm looking at those pictures, and those look so much like deployment pictures, like pictures from Iraq and Afghanistan, because I know active duty and National Guard and journalists, you work so hard and so late during those hours, you will just nap wherever you possibly can. And again, these men and women came from all over the place. I don't know where they would grab a nap otherwise inside the building there. And Nancy Pelosi, I know you're going to just say this, sorry to interrupt you. Nancy Pelosi did go out and meet with some of the members of the National Guard. There you see her there, talked to them, and I'm sure thanked them for what they are doing, and sort of a thanks for keeping us safe, and we certainly hope that is the case.
Article of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives of the United States of America in the name of itself and of the people of the United States of America against Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors.
When people were barging through these doors, breaking the windows with weapons, armed, pipe bombs, coming here to harm all of you, to harm the Speaker, to harm the Senate. Let me ask you a question. What do you think they would have done if they had gotten in? What do you think they would have done to you? And who do you think sent them here?
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
These articles of impeachment are flawed.
But I will not use process as an excuse. There is no excuse for President Trump's actions. The president took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Last week, there was a domestic threat at the door of the Capitol, and he did nothing to stop it.
If we fail to remove a white supremacist president who incited a white supremacist insurrection, it's communities like Missouri's 1st District that suffer the most. The 117th Congress must understand that we have a mandate to legislate in defense of Black lives. The first step in that process is to root out white supremacy, starting with impeaching the white supremacist in chief.
Madam Speaker, I've seen the dark evil of political violence firsthand, and it needs to stop. But all of us need to be unequivocal in calling it out every single time we see it, not just when it comes from the other side of the aisle. I oppose this rushed impeachment brought forward without a single hearing. And by the way, the Senate will not even take this up until President Trump is out of office. So let's keep that in mind. It will only serve to further divide a nation that is calling out for healing.
The ayes are 232. The nays are 197. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
It has passed. The gavel has fallen. 232 yes votes for the impeachment of Donald John Trump.
Today I am calling on all Americans to overcome the passions of the moment and join together as one American people. Let us choose to move forward united for the good of our families, our communities, and our country. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
I'm a former Navy helicopter pilot. I served for almost 10 years, and so at every duty station, whether it was in Norfolk or in Manama, Bahrain, and at every overseas place I was and I would enter as a military member, we would receive a security brief. And that security brief, we would be told to look for things that were out of place, look for things that were odd, and look at them with an eye towards security. And so if somebody was loitering around my helicopter on the tarmac, that would be questionable to me, for example. And so I arrived in the Capitol the week of the 6th, and I was very concerned about the violent crowds, the violent extremist groups that were coming to the Capitol for the mobs on the 6th, called there by the president. And I told my staff not to come in that day, to work remotely, not to be anywhere near the Hill. And I was really shocked when I got into the House office building and saw these groups inside. And what was so shocking is as you mentioned, visitors aren't allowed in the Capitol complex. Since March, since the start of COVID, that has been shut down. All tours are shut down. That was true in the last Congress and was reiterated on January 3rd in the new Congress that there would be no tours allowed, even tours given by members. And so the only reason you'd have a visitor is on official business. So to see these groups around the Capitol complex was really striking. And given what we know the next day of what happened, it's really shocking that those ties were made. And it was so odd to see them that my chief of staff called the sergeant at arms to say, what is going on? And
bitter and alone, President Trump today is reportedly wallowing in self-pity, seething with fury as he watched TV coverage of his impeachment.
The resolution is adopted without objection.
It's so bad. He's so miserable, I'm told, that people who are left in the West Wing, George, are doing everything they can to stay away from him.
We spoke to ABC News chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl, author of Front Row at the Trump Show.
The president is angry, he is frustrated, he is alone, but he is also frightened. There's no question that vote on impeachment, which was not a surprise, spooked him.
Even one of his most loyal defenders, Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, is silent. According to the Washington Post, Trump's staff has had enough. People are just over it. People are just exhausted and disappointed and angry and ready for all this to be done. Trump is reportedly even falling out with Rudy Giuliani.
The president is just enraged about Rudy Giuliani, demanding $20,000 a day and giving him some terrible legal advice and mounting some awful illegal offenses.
According to the New York Times, Trump wanted to go to Congress and defend himself yesterday, but was talked out of it. Instead, he was encouraged to make this video address, appealing to his supporters not to riot again next week at Joe Biden's inauguration.
There must be no violence, no law-breaking, and no vandalism of any kind.
Senator Lindsey Graham is one of the few allies still publicly standing by Trump.
What good comes from impeaching President Trump after he's out of office? That's an unconstitutional attack on the presidency. It will divide the country. It will incite violence.
Also on Team Trump, controversial freshman Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who refused to wear a mask as lawmakers sheltered from the rioters last week. She just announced she's going to move to impeach Joe Biden.
So on January 21st, I will be filing articles of impeachment on Joe Biden.
So much for national unity.
Melissa, the Biden administration is unveiling a $1.9 trillion economic proposal that will serve as the opening point for negotiations with Congress for a first stage rescue package as it tries to grapple with both the economic crisis and the pandemic during the first weeks in office. The program is divided into three specific pillars, so to speak. The first is dealing with the pandemic specifically and containing COVID-19. The second is direct aid to individuals and families. And the third is aid to state and local governments and businesses.
With 4 days left in his term, CBS News has learned President Trump is contemplating a final send-off full of pomp and circumstance on the morning of the inauguration.
I, Donald John Trump.
Mr. Trump will not attend the inauguration, unlike Vice President Mike Pence, who finally phoned to congratulate his successor, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, late this week. 4 separate House committees launched a joint review of the Capitol insurrection as harrowing new details emerged about how close a mob got to the vice president and his family. At one point, rioters were less than 100 feet from where the Pences were hiding before the Secret Service evacuated them to safety. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar cited the siege in his resignation letter and took a parting shot at the president, quote, "Unfortunately, the actions and rhetoric following the election, especially during this past week, threaten to tarnish these and other historic legacies of this administration."
Donald Trump remains a threat to our democracy and will be held accountable.
As the Senate prepares for an impeachment trial, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi declined to give a timetable for when the article could be handed over.
So urgent was the matter. They're now working on taking this to trial.
Tonight, inaugural festivities are officially underway for President-elect Joe Biden, with more events over the next 5 days. CBS News has also learned that Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will be sworn in by Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor on January 20th.
Inaugural preparations in place around the White House. A sighting of Rudy Giuliani Saturday signals impeachment trial prep may be happening too. President Trump tweetless and out of public view as his administration is boxed up and carried out.
Thank you for the privilege of serving as your vice president these past 4 years.
Mike and Karen Pence on their last official trip visiting troops this weekend, recounting military and foreign policy highlights on their watch, but breaking character in the wake of the Capitol riot. Pence made only one incidental mention of President Trump Saturday and encouraged the new president to follow some of their policies.
I urge the incoming administration to stay the course. Do what we've done. Stand up to Chinese aggression and trade abuses.
But Team Biden plans to put many Trump policies in reverse.
What next? What next?
As Joe Biden and Kamala Harris introduced their team of science experts, incoming Chief of Staff Ron Klain released a memo, a first 10 days plan of action. Among them, ending the Trump travel ban on Muslim-majority countries, rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, extending the pause on student loan payments, and masking, Mr. Biden will launch his 100-day masking challenge and will use his power to mandate mask wearing on federal property and interstate travel.
This is how we're going to, God willing, overcome the pandemic and build our country back better than it was before.
And new this morning, a big change coming for Kamala Harris. Aides say she will resign her California seat in the U.S. Senate tomorrow. We already know Governor Newsom has decided to appoint Alex Padilla to fill that seat. And for Harris, she will not be going far, of course. Part of her role as vice president will be to serve as president of the Senate. Padilla and the two newly elected Georgia Democrats are expected to be sworn in midweek.
In the lead up, in the run-up to his final days in office, apparently, according to the New York Times reporting, Trump allies have collected tens of thousands of dollars, possibly more, from people seeking pardons. This is all according to the New York Times.
As part of this National Day of Service, Vice President-elect Harris volunteered at Martha's Table in Anacostia. This is a nonprofit that helps families get access to quality education, health care, and other resources. President-elect Joe Biden also participated in the National Day of Service. He was joined by the incoming First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, and they helped to pack boxes with cans at a Philadelphia food bank.
When I came to the White House, I reflected on the responsibility I have always felt as a mother to encourage, give strength, and teach values of kindness.
A kindness Melania Trump has chosen not to extend is the traditional tour of the White House living quarters, given by the outgoing First Lady to the new First Lady assuming the role. This is the first time a modern First Lady has chosen not to perform this ceremonial passing of the torch, according to CNN.
So the question we've been looking at today is whether some members of the National Guard have been relieved of duty after the vetting process. The AP reported this morning that 2 members of the Guard were relieved after vetting found some troubling connections with radical extremist views. What we're told, though, is actually the number is about a dozen members of the National Guard have been relieved of duty, but that it's not because of a concern about extremist views. According to people I've talked to, the vetting basically went in sort of 2 directions. One is looking at routine criminal background history. Any kind of hits of troubling information there would have resulted in this decision. And secondly, an analysis of looking at what other guardsmen were saying about what they heard people making troubling comments. And so the Guards' attitude was simply, you know, let's just have zero tolerance. We might as well just, take no chances and move these people out.
But we now have, for the first time in our history, something other than a peaceful transfer of power.
That's right.
What does that mean for us writ large?
Well, I do think that we're bigger than all of this. Donald Trump was a stain on our country. I don't think we could have sustained our democracy if he had 2 terms in office for what he was doing to our institutions or what he was doing to our Constitution. He dishonored it.
The last time the Senate convened, we had just reclaimed the Capitol from violent criminals who tried to stop Congress from doing our duty. The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people. And they tried to use fear and violence to stop a specific proceeding of the first branch of the federal government, which they did not like. But we pressed on. We stood together and said an angry mob would not get veto power over the rule of law in our nation, not even for one night.
And I'm honored. I'm truly honored to be your next president and commander-in-chief. And I'll always be a proud son of the state of Delaware. As Tommy, or better known as Chairman Carper, Senator Carper, knows, my colleagues in the Senate used to always kid me for quoting Irish poets. They thought I did it because I'm Irish. I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because they're the best poets in the world. And James Joyce was said to have told a friend that when it comes his time to pass, when he dies, he said, Dublin will be written on my heart. Well, excuse the emotion, but when I die, Delaware will be written on my heart. And the hearts of all of us, all the Bidens. We love you all. You've been there for us in the good and the bad. You never walked away. And I am proud to be a son of Delaware. And I am even more proud to be standing here doing this from the Major Beau Biden facility. Ladies and gentlemen, I only have one regret. He's not here, because we should be introducing him as president. But we have great opportunities. Delaware's taught us anything's possible. Anything's possible in this country. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
There are Republican lawmakers who have also sought pardons from the president because they are worried about potential legal exposure that they could be facing for the roles that they played in that January 6th rally that happened on the National Mall right here behind me before, of course, that pro-Trump mob went up to Capitol Hill and breached the halls of those federal buildings. And so basically in this meeting, we are told that the attorneys went to the president and they said that if he pardoned himself, the kids, or any of these Republican lawmakers who had been seeking clemency, that he could open himself up to being in a more vulnerable position than if he didn't, given these would be these forward-looking pardons, since none of these people have been charged with any crimes as of now. And they basically told the president that maybe some of these would be legally sound, but the optics of it would be so bad for the president. And so what's notable, Anderson, that we're learning from sources is that this broke through with Trump. Good morning, Andrew. It is a packed schedule on Capitol Hill for confirmation hearings. We're going to hear from picks from the incoming administration to lead Treasury, State, Defense, Homeland Security, and the intelligence community as the transition tries to expedite consideration of its national security team and has selected interim leaders at every agency to tap on Inauguration Day. This is coming from each agency's own continuation of government succession planning, and those are going to be tapped if none of the nominees are confirmed.
He would always find a place to go to Mass. So when he was traveling, he always had his advance team and his travel team find a church so he can go to Mass. And when he was in Washington, he would go to Mass. So that's how I got to know him.
Biden will only be the second ever Catholic U.S. president. The first, John F. Kennedy, inaugurated 60 years ago in 1961.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diane Macedo. We're coming on the air with breaking news. President Trump has just released a farewell video as he prepares to leave the White House tomorrow ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration. Let's listen.
We are a truly magnificent nation. All Americans were horrified by the assault on our Capitol. Political violence is an attack on everything we cherish as Americans. It can never be tolerated. Now more than ever, we must unify around our shared values and rise above the partisan rancor and forge our common destiny. It was about America first because we all wanted to make America great again. We restored the principle that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Our agenda was not about right or left. It wasn't about Republican or Democrat, but about the good of a nation, and that means the whole nation. With the support and prayers of the American people, we achieved more than anyone thought possible. Nobody thought we could even come close.
He's also reportedly stewing, no, not about the 400,000 dead on his watch, but rather about the fact that President-elect Joe Biden got cooler and more famous people to perform at his inauguration. According to the Washington Post, he's particularly upset that Lady Gaga, Jennifer Lopez, Tom Hanks, and other stars agreed to perform. But the stench from his administration is so foul that some folks won't even bother showing up for his departure ceremony tomorrow morning. Vice President Mike Pence, soon-to-be Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy are all skipping the ceremony. They're not alone. Many former Trump officials are suddenly busy washing their hair or combing their mustaches.
Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris are about to lead a nationwide memorial service from the Lincoln Memorial, reflecting pool in Washington, honoring the more than 400,000 Americans who have now lost their lives to the coronavirus pandemic since it began in this country 1 year ago. That once unthinkable toll still growing now, roughly equaling the number of Americans killed in World War II. The memorial to that conflict just down the National Mall at the other end of the reflecting pool from today's observances.
Your Eminence, Cardinal Gregory, and Yolanda Adams, to heal, we must remember. It's hard sometimes to remember, but that's how we heal. It's important to do that as a nation. That's why we're here today. Between sundown and dusk, let us shine the lights in the darkness along the sacred pool of reflection. Remember all whom we lost.
President Trump has granted clemency to Stephen K. Bannon, the former White House chief strategist who was charged with defrauding people who supported building a border wall that Mr. Trump supported, White House officials said. The president made the decision after a day of frantic efforts to sway his thinking, including from Mr. Bannon, who spoke to him by phone earlier on Tuesday.
And here's some of the tape playback of the president giving that final wave just into our newsroom. So we're showing that final wave from a different vantage point, but he is now, the picture on your left is a live picture where Marine One is about to depart. But normally this all would take place after the inauguration, after a shaking of hands, after a tea, after a ceremonial walk. None of that is happening today. The president has chosen to leave town early, head to this celebration at Joint Base Andrews, and then head off to Florida. As we watch this, I'm struck because we have this wide vantage point of the White House and the whole complex, that if you look to the top left of your screen, and if you were to see the street right across is Blair House. And Blair House is where the president-elect Joe Biden spent the evening and is right now. And that is as close as the outgoing president and the incoming president will come today. This picture you see right there. The outgoing President Trump, aboard Marine One, it's taking off, about to lift up over the White House. We'll pass over Blair House, where the incoming president waits to take the oath of office after noon today.
A goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form. And again, I want to just, in leaving, I want to thank our Vice President, Mike Pence, and Karen. I want to thank Congress, because we really worked well with Congress, at least certain elements of Congress. But we really did. We've gotten so much done that nobody thought would be possible. But I do want to thank Congress. And I want to thank all of the great people of Washington, D.C., all of the people that we worked with to put this miracle together. So have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Joe Biden, as you can see in the front row, is all slated to attend a worship service at this cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle, also commonly known as St. Matthew's. He's accompanied with a bipartisan group of members of Congress and other politicians in attendance.
Senator, just for a moment, as we see, we watch the Clintons and now the Bushes descending, soon to be followed by the Obamas.
Watching these scenes as the dignitaries arrive at the Capitol.
Kamala Harris there, and her husband now exiting the vehicle.
And there's the president-elect also arriving just now onto the steps of the Capitol. And we've got about an hour and a half to go before our Constitution prescribes that the new president will be sworn in.
Yeah, let's go to Craig Melvin.
What you
you are all about to be part of America is a historic moment of firsts. To administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman Vice President, Kamala Harris, it is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Once-in-a-century virus that silently stalks the country. It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism that we must confront and we will defeat. A story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, and devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
If we merge mercy with might, and might
with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
As I just want to pause because I want people to see what's happening here. It's important that the Vice President Harris and her husband Doug Emhoff had just escorted Vice President Pence and Karen Pence down the east front steps of the Capitol. And Andy, I mean, to continue your thought, this is a moment that the country needed to see its leaders in both political parties come together. The president, former President Trump, did not choose to attend, but Vice President Pence's choice to come was a real statement. How important do you think that was?
I think it's critically important, and I compliment Vice President Pence for being there, and I actually celebrate the role that he played in the last 10 days to help us celebrate our democracy.
Fine. But again, on behalf of the House of Representatives, it is my privilege to extend to you the flag that was flown the early moment that you were sworn in as President of the United States. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Dr. Biden. Thank you. If we had the lunch, we would have had California wine. Is that not right? Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, congratulations. With liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All the way up steps to his toilet, please.
How are you feeling? Mr. President, how does it feel to be president finally? Hey, how are you, sir? It's good to see you.
You got to keep doing this.
I know, I did.
Good to see you.
It's been 3 hours. How does it feel, Mr. President?
It feels great.
It feels good?
There, as President Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, make their way up to the White House on the grounds for the very first time as the first family, the President and the First Lady. They're stepping outside the White House. Let's just listen for a moment.
That you take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God.
That today also marked a change of control of the Senate, with Democrats taking the majority. Senator Chuck Schumer, now the majority leader. He is both the first Jewish person to hold this rank, as well as the first from New York. Schumer will oversee a rare 50-50 split in the Senate. It's only the fourth time in history this has happened.
Help change the course of the COVID crisis, and combat climate change in a way that we haven't done so far, and advance racial equity and support other underserved communities. We're going to rebuild our economy as well. These are just all starting points.
Mr. President, I'm pulling for your success. Your success is our country's success, and God bless you.
I'm glad you're there, and I wish you well. You have spoken for us today. Now you will lead for us, and we're ready to march with you. Good luck. God bless you.
Joe, I'm proud of you, and you and Kamala need to know that you've got all of us here rooting for your success, keeping you in our prayers, and we will be available in any ways that we can as citizens to help you guide our country forward. We wish you Godspeed.